Well, I want to welcome you to this channel. If this is the first time you've come here, of course this is the first video I've made. I do want to welcome you, and let me begin with just a brief introduction. My name is Matt Kroll. For anyone that may not know who I am, not that there would be any reason for you to know who I am, but I will say that I'm a former member of New Testament Christian Churches of America, headquartered in Graham, Washington, where I live. And I'm a former member, graduate of the organization's Bible College, as well as a licensed minister up until around the year 2000, 2001. There are a number of reasons that I'm doing this video that I'll get to, but I thought I'd just start with a very brief introduction because I live in Graham and interact with members, both current and former, of the church. I've developed somewhat of a burden over the last number of years, partly because of my own experience that I'll briefly describe. I ended up, as I said previously, leaving this group in around the year 2001, beginning of this millennia, I guess, and left for reasons that I won't go into in this video, but left disillusioned with religion in general and Christianity specifically. Now, some of that disillusionment was my own doing, the way that I responded to certain things, but it was also because of the theology of New Testament Christian Churches of America, which from this point forward I'm simply going to refer to as kind of, I guess, an acronym NTCC, which is what it is primarily known by current and former members. If you're not familiar with the group, that's okay. You may find some of the information I'll discuss here beneficial to you in your own context. But New Testament Christian Churches, again, NTCC, is a Pentecostal holiness church. They would describe themselves as full gospel. And at the time of my departure, as I mentioned, I left with a great degree of discouragement, disillusionment with religion in general, and Christianity specifically. It was through my beginning of a pursuit of a undergraduate degree in civil engineering that the first sparks of, or maybe awakening of, not really a dormant, but a repressed capacity to critically think began, and I began to analyze the theology that I was exposed to determine whether the claims made by the group were valid and represented historical Christianity. And so that's the purpose of this series of videos, is I want to examine the theology of New Testament Christian Churches of America. There are many people on the internet that have dealt with this group from various perspectives, but I've not seen any that have approached the actual theology, the doctrinal beliefs of NTCC. And so that's what this channel, or my videos, will be focused on. Now, to give you some additional perhaps degree of credibility why you can listen to me, I am hopeful of completing a Master of Divinity in at a local theological school, university, seminary, accredited seminary here in Tacoma. And so that journey began in conjunction with my engineering education, that start of reflecting on the theology of this group, and as someone who wanted to kind of take a deep dive into what I was exposed to, part of that journey was going back to school and analyzing from an objective standpoint what the group believes. And so at the beginning here, I think what I plan to do is analyze and look at what NTCC claims from their doctrinal statements on their website, and then analyze those claims with what the church has historically claimed in both the writings of church fathers, patristic writers, as well as the creeds, and then having traced that historical development of important doctrines that really define what the Christian church is, that give it its identity as separate from different, not only other religions, but specifically cults, and what separates the Christian church from aberrant groups that teach ideas that are contrary to the historic stream of doctrinal development that the church has gone through throughout the last 2 millennia. So I'm titling this initial series of videos, maybe with the topic, Is the Doctrine of the Trinity as explained by New Testament Christian churches of America consistent with the historic witness of the doctrine found in the ancient creeds that articulated and defined Orthodox Trinitarian doctrine? And so my thesis is, as I just explained, my argument is going to be that I'm going to demonstrate by the available data and analyzing what the church has said, and demonstrate that actually NTCC, objectively speaking, falls outside of the Christian faith. Now that's going to need some clarification, because that's a very provocative and controversial statement, no doubt, for many that will watch this video. And so I want to explain what I mean by that. So let me begin by stating that the goal of this presentation is to demonstrate, again, that New Testament Christian Church of America, NTCC, based on its public teachings and understanding of the doctrine of the Trinity, is unorthodox regarding the doctrine of God. And therefore, as a religious institution, NTCC falls outside of Christian orthodoxy. A couple of points require clarification at this point to avoid misunderstandings. And first, by orthodoxy, I mean that confession of Trinitarian thought that is consistent with its historical expression as found in the ancient creeds, as well as patristic writings. Specifically, creeds such as the Apostolic, Nicene, and Athanasian creeds, which are the earliest expressions of Trinitarian thought, define what is a genuine expression of the Christian faith. Therefore, any denomination, organization, or institution expressing a version of Trinitarian thought or Trinitarianism, or a doctrine of the Trinity that is inconsistent with these creeds, is outside of the Christian faith. Now, by faith is meant the objective content of the Christian message. What the Christian church from its infancy has declared about God and His Christ is the standard by which all professing Christian institutions are to be examined. Secondly, while the doctrine of the Trinity should be recognized as central to a proper understanding of the being of God and His mission in the world regarding humanity's salvation, it is not the intent of this presentation to call into question anyone's personal profession of faith. Though it is recognized that serious errors in this area of theology can undermine one's assurance of salvation, It's not the intent of this presentation to suggest that any member of NTCC, former or current, lacks a genuine relationship with Christ or is not a genuine believer who has experienced God's grace and gift of salvation through Christ. The purity of one's theology does not necessarily determine one's relationship with Christ, because all believers have theological blind spots, whether we recognize them or not. And so long as Christ is viewed as a propitiation of one's sins, as 1 John chapter 2, verse 2 states, and that person who is professing Christ as Savior is genuinely trusting in the Christ of Scripture for their redemption, there is no reason to question a person's professional faith. And so the purpose of this presentation and the following presentations will be twofold. It is hoped that the information presented may be objectively reviewed and considered by current leaders in the group, as well as former and current members, as well as students, in the hope that it will result in reform of the institution in question. Now, with that in mind, let me add a little caveat. I'm very much aware that when we as humans are confronted with ideas that run contrary to very deeply held beliefs and ideologies, ideas, there is a basic human mechanism that causes us to defend those deeply cherished beliefs. And so we are predisposed because of that to immediately begin to defend or to push back against an idea that that we are exposed to that is in conflict with what we intuitively or maybe have been trained or conditioned to believe. Now, when you add to that another layer that would be to dismiss a set of beliefs or a challenge to someone's beliefs by associating it with a person or group that you intuitively feel disqualifies the arguments in question. And to do that is to commit what is known as the genetic fallacy. And that is simply to take the arguments and associate them with someone that you see as invalidating the claims being made. And that is because arguments should stand on their own regardless of who presents them. And there may be those who know me and know my background may be more predisposed to dismiss what I'm presenting here. And what I'm appealing to is that those that watch the video would look beyond the person presenting the information and look objectively at the claims that I'm making and the information I'm providing and do your own analysis. Do your own search, your own study, and determine whether or not the claims themselves hold validity. One way of illustrating this is to say that it really doesn't matter whether it's a college professor or a second grader that articulates and argues that 2 + 2 = 4. The validity of the claim itself should stand up to scrutiny regardless of its source. And the same argument could be made about a similar type of argument, whether it is Mussolini or Hitler or Joseph Stalin that's making the claim. The perceived, whether real or perceived, flaws in the individual making the claims do not automatically discount the arguments being made. And so I'm hoping that those that will watch this will listen objectively consider the arguments, and weigh them based on their own merit. And so secondly, those who have been disillusioned with religion because of their involvement with NTCC, it is my hope that they may recognize that this group's position on this important topic represents a fundamental error in the group's theology, and that is an error in the person of God. And this is an area that is personal to me, because I have known former members that no longer go to church, no longer really have the vibrancy of faith that they once held. And there may be those that are in the group that are struggling themselves with what they've been exposed to. And as one that has been disillusioned myself, I know how devastating it can be to lose your confidence because you learn that what you've been exposed to, what you believed, what you embraced, came up wanting. And so the purpose here is to help those that maybe have been disillusioned be able to recapture some of the hope that maybe they've lost. And that's because, and I'm starting with the doctrine of the doctrine of the Trinity, because the doctrine of God is the principle of first things. What I mean by that is that it logically follows from this fact that NTCC's theology in this critical area would adversely impact their understanding of other principal doctrines, such as soteriology, which is the study of salvation, and so forth. Now, let me qualify that statement because I don't want to overreach with that. While I would argue that many Catholics are very orthodox in their understanding of the Trinity and are some of the best scholars in the area of Trinitarian studies, there are obviously many areas as a Protestant believer that I'm going to have significant differences in my theology from a Catholic. So I realize that just because someone is orthodox in this area does not necessarily mean that they are automatically going to be safeguarded in regard to errors in other portions of their theological beliefs. However, I think that you can make a reasonable argument that when someone errs in the doctrine of God and misunderstands who God is in himself, that it is very likely that they will err in other very important corollary doctrines that are informed by an understanding of who God is. And if we misunderstand who God is, we're going to misunderstand his mission in the world and what he accomplishes in redemptive history. And that in itself can be a great source not only of undermining any assurance that we have in regard to salvation, but at the least bringing about questions of assurance, questions of trust, and other things that can impact us on a personal level. Therefore, NTC's theology, when considered as a whole, fails to accurately reflect and represent a historical expression of the Christian faith. And therefore, it is hoped that those who have been disillusioned by their previous involvement with the group may, as a result of the information that will be shared here, be encouraged to reconsider the Christian faith and experience God's mercy anew, along with his love and grace. As Keith Drury states, and I'll close here, the creeds are our anchor to the historic Christian faith. In examining the historic development of the doctrine of God from an Orthodox Christian perspective and comparing it with what NTCC advances regarding the Trinity, we should first begin by looking at some of the earliest patristic writings that were prototypical of the church's understanding of God and foreshadow the eventual formulation and formal declaration found in the creeds. And from there, we'll examine the creeds themselves, as previously mentioned, and discuss why the language of the creeds is important. From there, we will examine the context within which the Nicene Creed specifically developed, and finally discuss the doctrine of God's simplicity to discover how this important doctrine affects the doctrine of God generally and the Trinity specifically. So with that, I will end this video and hope to see you in the next one. God bless you.